Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspired and Empowered Living TV show and podcast. And we are live Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern on talk4tv.com, w4wn.com, and my YouTube channel. And today we are talking about the power of your voice. Communicate with confidence, clarity, and compassion. And so today's episode is part 2, and we're going to continue where we left off last week, which was a question, and I'll get specific around the question around judgment. So we're going to be talking today about the blocks to communicating with confidence, clarity, and compassion. So stay tuned and learn about the blocks and how to clear them. And I'm your host, Nanci Deutsch, licensed clinical social worker, certified hypnotherapist, and intuitive business expert. I combine my counseling, coaching, and intuitive abilities to transform your life and help women take their business to the next level or create a successful, holistic business. And this show is not a replacement for therapy or counseling. It is for educational purposes only. So we are going to get to, last week, Anastasia asked the question. And of course, you know I love your questions. So definitely keep bringing them in, asking your questions about anything that I'm talking about or comments, anything that occurs to you. So Anastasia said, why do we care so much about what others think of us? Now, this question came after I started talking about judgment. And how judgment, what happens is when we have the fear of judgment, and the fear of judgment is old, it is something that we have had. It's actually, the energy of fear is actually in our DNA. It is instinctual, and it is instinctual because of the stress response, that fight, flight, or freeze reaction. And what happens is that fear of judgment plays right into that fear reaction. So let me talk a little bit. I'm going to talk about my Psych 101 lesson so that we're all on the same page. So you have your conscious mind, which is the part of you that tuned in or is tuning in now, or will be tuning in for those of you coming later. And thank you, conscious mind of yours. And your conscious mind empowers you to make decisions. And when you make decisions from that empowered place, it really helps you to feel inspired and empowered. So that's your conscious mind. Your subconscious mind or your unconscious mind is the part of you from the moment you were conceived to present time has recorded every moment that you have been alive. And so those programs, those limiting beliefs, those emotions that are programmed into your subconscious mind is what would keep you from being able to use your voice effectively, to be able to communicate with clarity, confidence, and compassion. And so we're going to be talking more about overcoming those blocks today, as I said before. The first one being the fear of judgment. And then you have your superconscious mind, which is the part of you that is connected to your higher aspects of self, your soul, and your intuition comes from connecting with your higher self and your soul. And your angels and guides and beings of light are all part of that super conscious mind of yours. And so you want to be learning to really, when you're in alignment, that's when you're communicating with confidence, clarity, and compassion. And that's what we're going to continue to talk about today. So the question that Anastasia asked specifically is, why do we care so much about what others think of us? And we care because of that fear reaction, like I talked before about that stress reaction. That energy of fear is so instinctual and so deeply ingrained in us that we are reacting from it all the time, even when you don't even realize that you're reacting from it. So let's talk a little bit more about what else happens and why you would have that fear of judgment. So, and I talked a little bit about this at the end of the show, but I wanted to bring it up again because it's such a crucial and important piece. And that subconscious mind of yours, as I said, is recorded everything that has gone on for you. And what happens is that when you were growing up from past conditioning, so it could be growing up from your childhood, your teenage years. Teenagers are really scared of that judgment. They want that peer pressure. I mean, kids, we all do. I mean, we still want that approval. It's part of being human. But what happens is as you heal yourself and becoming more inspired and empowered, leads you to be able to tap in to that place of authenticity and alignment so that you can speak your truth and trust that your approval is coming from inside of you rather than from outside of you. However, most of us, including me, I admit it, there's still this fear of judgment. Now, does it get less and less and less? Yes, because as you heal those issues where that fear of judgment began, that's how you can let go. Now, that fear of judgment will affect you. It will affect you in your relationships on a personal level and a business level. What happens when you have that fear of judgment, you are afraid to speak your truth, and it will affect you in your business by not being able to speak directly to perhaps coworkers or your team or clients or anything like that. And then you have you have your personal life. And when you have that fear of judgment, and here's the thing, and I also want you to know that this, a lot of times, it's not even conscious that you go into that reactive space. And it's so like reactive. It's just, it happens so easily. And so it's learning how to come out of that reaction space so that you can then start taking actions that feel authentic and congruent with you, and start speaking your truth and not fearing judgment and judging and others' judgment. And so what happens also when you have the fear of judgment, so you may stay quiet when you really want to speak up, or you water down your truth because you are afraid of what others really think of you or feel about you, because you want to be liked so much. And you may not be sharing who you really are. Or if you're as a business owner, you may not be sharing who you are or promoting yourself in a confident way. And so what this is all about is and here's the other thing. The other thing about the fear of judgment is very often it can come from feeling like you have to be perfect. You have to be perfect. And if you're not perfect, then you shouldn't be speaking your truth. And you start comparing yourself to other people. Now, we have a comment. Arnie says, exactly what I post and I am doing, exactly what I post and am doing, being my authentic self. So, hey, Arnie, welcome. I want to give a shout out to you. Glad that you're here, and really excited to see you. And I really want to acknowledge you for that. You are posting and being your authentic self. And that is so important and so crucial, because when you are allowing yourself to be that authentic self, you are attracting the people. If you're in business, you're attracting the people you're meant to serve. And in your personal relationships, you'll attract the people that want to connect with you, that want to relate to you, friends and relatives. Now, if they don't like what you say, now here's the thing. When it comes to friends and relatives, okay, it can be tough because you may get most of the judgment from them. But really, I love what Arnie just said. To thy own self be true. So Arnie just said, to thy own self be true. And that is what it's about. And here's the thing. You're not going to be able to please everyone. It's just not going to happen. So if you are comparing yourself to other people, or you're trying to be perfect before you speak out and speak up and speak your truth, then you may never speak your truth. And so I really want to support all of you in being able to do that. Now, what also happens is that when you are doing your work and you have a certain attachment to a certain identity. Now, okay, now here's the thing. It's learning to be your authentic self rather than trying to be the facade what you think your people or people will want you to say, or that or would like you to say. And it's learning to be that authentic self, to be true, like Arnie said it, to thine own self be true. And that is the truth. And it's really important to be in that truth and come from that truth. And when you come from that truth, that's when you are able to connect with that authentic self, which is really your higher self, that wise, unconditionally loving part of you, or your soul, that core energy essence of who you are. And when you connect with that truth of who you are and you're in alignment, you become powerful. Your presence becomes wanting to be heard. And Arnie said it, he brought in another point. You stand in your own power. And that's what happens. Standing in your own power. And that's what you want. You want to stand in your power when you are in connection with your authentic self. You're able to stand in your power, and you allow, and here's the thing, letting go of the judgment. I see your comment or question, Misty. I'll get to it in a sec. When you allow yourself to stand in your power, to be in alignment, to speak your truth, you allow your light to shine. You allow your soul's light, the light and the love that is who you really are at the core, your core energy essence. You allow yourself to shine, and you stop playing small, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life. You stop playing small. And that is how you become empowered. Now, Misty says, you need to know the true you in order to do this. Yes, Misty, I agree with you. And here's the thing. Yes and no. And what I mean by that is, yes, you want to know who the true you is. But I also want to remind you, and all of you, is to remind you that we're on this journey to get to know the true us more and more. So learning how to let go of that facade or the ego representation of what you think you should or shouldn't do, and learning to tap into who you really are, the true you, is a journey and is a process unto yourself. And it's, I see, Nikki, your question. And it's something that happens over time. It's not like all of a sudden, like, poof, I'm the true me. It's this uncovering and discovering, learning to discover who you really are, and letting go of that approval, that fear of judgment, is like, it's the most amazing thing that happens. And I'm going to tell you, I'm still in the journey. I've been working on this for a very long time. I haven't gotten it all covered. I am still wanting to, here's the thing. And what happens is there's still that wanting of approval. And here's the thing, when you're in business and you're on social media can be a real mind, like it can mess with your mind, because you want all the likes and you want the comments and you want the engagement. And it's about being in the journey of trusting that the universe is bringing you the alignment of who you're really meant to serve, not 100,000 views, but who you're meant to serve and where you are right now. And when I say where you are right now, what I mean by that is that, and I'll give you an example from my own life. So I started this TV show. Well, actually, I started it a few years ago, the TV show, but I've been doing the podcast for many years. And I will tell you, I was being called to do the podcast, but I still wanted to hide. And so I was doing the podcast, but I wasn't doing the social media, or I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. And then as I kept growing and healing, and as I kept feeling more comfortable with what I was doing, and I remember being guided, I remember that still small voice inside of me saying, in the beginning, this is practice. This is your practice. So keep going. Keep going. It was like very encouraging from spirit. So I was very encouraged. And so I kept going. And what happened was I started having more and more confidence in myself, because what happens is as you do, you get more confident. No matter what you're talking about, whether it's personal or professional, the more you process, the more you uncover about yourself, the more you discover about yourself, and the more actions, inspired actions that you take, the more confident you become. And so that's what I want to support all of you in remembering, that it is a journey and a process and not a poof, magic, you're done. And know that little by little, you're going to keep growing into more and more the authentic you, the true you, as Misty said, and learning to be able to connect more to that true you. So you don't have to know who your true you is. It's about learning and discovering who your true you is. What are your feelings? What are your thoughts? What are your what are those intuitive impulses wanting to say to you? Because those intuitive feelings or knowings or sensings are giving you clues from your higher self and your soul, those higher aspects of self, to what your soul or what you're being guided or what you are needing to hear in the moment. And I want to get to Mickey's question. So let me get to Mickey's question. Hi, Mickey. So is this like living in the moment with what you have? So when you are connected, you are living in the moment. When you're in that place of living in the moment and you're in that alignment and you're uncovering your authentic self, your true you, as Misty said, and really discovering more and more of who you are, it's unfolding. You are unfolding. And the more present that you are, when you get those intuitive hits, it's when you are present in the moment that you may feel or sense or see or know that you are in the moment, because that's where your intuition comes, in the moment. And you're in that place where you can receive the guidance from your higher self and from your soul. And so living in that moment is really important and really powerful to move you on your journey of discovering more of who you really are. So, and also another thing about the fear of judgment is it's the old programming. So what happens is when we grow up with trauma, our nervous system gets programmed to fear rather than love, to fear like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Like I have clients like Kathy. Kathy would be her first reaction is, oh my God, I did something wrong. I did it wrong. I'm wrong. And her nervous system goes, ah. And what happened for Kathy is she grew up and her mother always criticized her, made her wrong, and made her so wrong and so critical. She was so critical of her that when she tries to do something, or when she says something, or something happens, her first reaction is like, oh, I did it wrong. Oh my God. So Kathy and I have worked together for time. As we work together, she's been able to know that that first reaction is coming from her old trauma, her mother, And now she does the self-talk, and the self-talk of saying, no, I haven't done this wrong. This is okay. I can do this. Or it was really fine. And one of the ways to talk to help yourself get out of the fear of judgment is the powerful self-talk. And what are you saying to yourself to support you in being able to know that you got this? And sometimes that can be really hard, because if you grew up with a critical mother or father or critical caretaker like Kathy, it can take time, or even awareness, like we were talking about, like Nikki was talking about, living in the moment. You need to be in the moment and be aware in the moment to notice that you've been triggered by the fear of judgment, by that old trauma pattern, so that you can self-correct. And so that's one of the things that you can do to self-correct that fear of judgment. And when you're running your own business, that fear of judgment definitely, like I said, the approval or the comparison, the perfection, I mean, it can come up in so many ways. And again, it can come up in so many ways around your personal life. Like when you have that trauma reaction, your nervous system, that's a default. And it's going to be a process to retrain your nervous system to think differently. And that's what they now call as neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is when you are creating new brain waves, new neural pathways, so that you can then start reacting differently, or I call it responding, not reacting. To me, when you're reacting from that subconscious mind. When you're responding from a very conscious, clear space. And that is who you want to be, to communicate with confidence, clarity, and compassion. So, and then here's the other thing is this cultural conditioning. And your cultural conditioning, like for example, for women, many of us women grew up in the era, oh, no, you can't get angry. Being angry, not for women, or you got to people please. And here's the thing, I want you to know, men have people pleasing too. But in our culture, especially years ago, women were taught to take care of others, take care of the family, take care of everybody else but themselves, and not do the self-care, to people please. And it's learning to, again, correct. Again, noticing that you're being triggered or you're reacting to old cultural conditioning. Because I want you to all know that women and men, we have all the same rights. You have a right to all your feelings. And anger is one of those feelings that it's really important to be able to learn that you have a right to, and to be able to know that you can feel the anger and you don't have to act on it. And one of the ways to move it through, and again, I always say, feel your feelings, really important, but you want to make sure that you're not hurting yourself, someone else, or the environment, like destroying property. So that's important. And I really want all of you to know that feeling your feelings is really important. And I was talking about this, I don't remember if it was last show or the show before or whatever, it was fairly recently, where my mother, I think it was last week, my mother was a rager. And what a rager is they react to every little thing. She would be overwhelmed. There were three of us. I was the oldest. And she would react. She would react to everything. I felt like I had to walk on eggshells to try to please her. There's where people pleasing can come in. And I was terrified of anger because when she would go into the rages, I didn't know if she would hurt me or hit me or whatever. And so there was this major fear factor. And so know those trauma reactions can still rule you today. And I had to work a long time to be able to feel my anger, to know it was safe to feel my anger and to connect with it in a healthy way. And I want you to know, like, when you're feeling a feeling, when whatever that feeling is that you can breathe through it and you can ask your higher self and your soul and the universe, your angels, your guides to help you release it. But it's important to acknowledge it and not try to deny it or suppress it, because what happens if you're doing that, that can lead to symptoms. So, and that fear of judgment and that fear is all part of what happens. And so I really want to support all of you in remembering and knowing that it's okay to breathe, to ground yourself, to move through and allow that anger. A lot of times what I'll tell a client to do is to go to the gym and move it through your body. Or I used to have a client that would run it out. So find your way, your tool to move the emotions through your body, because it's when you move the emotions through your body that you can get back into the alignment. You get back into that place of centeredness and peace, which is where that power of your voice can come through in a confident, clear, and compassionate way. And I want to share with you that I have a meditation, and that meditation takes you through the process of clearing, connecting with your higher self, and asking a question so that you can receive an intuitive answer, that you can make your best decisions using this meditation. And I have it in MP3 format so you can listen to it, or I have a PDF if you want to read it. Breathe through it, because you want to be able to allow yourself to connect, to clear, connect, and allow that information to come through. So go to the name of the show, inspired and empowered living.com/meditation, meditation. So inspired and empowered living.com/meditation, meditation. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you, because I wanted to make sure that you have a tool, another tool that can help you get into a clearer, calmer space, so that you can then come into that alignment and be in the alignment in order to take action or to speak your truth on whether it's a personal or a business experience. You want to be in alignment before you speak. And you definitely, if you have a reaction and you've been triggered and you have a reaction like the fear of judgment, you want to make sure that you clear that fear before you speak your truth to someone. Because when you want to speak from that clear space, the calm space, that's really important for you to be able to speak your truth. So no, that's all important in terms of being able to really move through that fear. And then the next block that I want to talk about is the lack of clarity. So what happens is when you are wanting to speak your truth, but there may be conflicting thoughts or feelings or intentions that would cloud you or confuse you. And if you're in that place of cloudiness or confusion, then you do not want to be speaking your truth until you work through and do what you need to do to process through so that you can then speak your truth with clarity and conviction and compassion. And so, what happens? Why do you have a lack of clarity? What happens? Why does that happen? Well, you have, again, those fears, the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fears of conflict. This is a biggie. I have a lot of clients that are really, really fearful of conflict, and learning to know that you can find, like, what I believe in is when you and the other person are willing to have really good conversations, you can work through the conflict and have conflict resolution. I know that I've done shows on that before, and that's really important. So when you are working on being able to have more clarity, you want to be able to make sure you're letting go of those fears. And again, being able to understand where those fears came from, what triggered the fears. Like, for example, when I was talking about, when I think last week I was talking about my friend's tone of voice. And when she would go into the tone of voice, I got triggered. And that trigger was my mother. I was like, that tone of voice sounded angry. I went, and I would have to work through before I would be able to have a great conversation with her. And this friend and I have been friends for a very long time. And what's amazing about our relationship is we're able to communicate and we're able to process through our challenges or conflicts together, so that we end up getting closer and more connected rather than being split apart. Because what happens if you're not dealing with the conflict in the relationship, you can end up, the relationship may end, because anger can keep on growing and growing if it's not if the conflict is not resolved. And it may be anger, or it may be fear, like, and maybe intimidation, or it may be whatever your issue is and whatever that other person's issue is. And when you're clashing, it's about learning what's your piece and what's theirs, and working on your stuff, and then in a healthy way, be able to communicate with clarity and compassion. Now, I know sometimes you're not always able to do that, but I also coach when I would coach couples or when I coach clients. Don't communicate until you are in that calmer, clearer state so that you can communicate with that confidence or clarity, conviction, and compassion. And I will tell you what happens when that happens. You are able to, the other person is more likely to hear you. Because if you start youing the other person or spewing things out because you're in reaction, it can escalate into things that you do not want. So really important. If you notice that you are getting triggered with fear or anger, take a time out. Do not speak until you process more things through, and then be able to go back and find a time where the two of you can talk to have a win-win conversation or a healthy conversation. And another thing that creates lack of clarity is if you're in emotions, and this is what I was saying, if your emotions and you're really angry or you're really fearful, or maybe you've been shamed or guilted. I know that sometimes people guilt to try to get what they want. And if you feel like you've been guilted, or maybe, and then very often we are shamed. And you may not even realize it because it may be so part of how you grew up. But I also want to support you. No one has the right to shame you. No one has the right to guilt you. And it's learning to recognize that that's been happening, that you've been triggered. And again, not reacting, but being able to process through. And you may need support to be able to work that through and to be able to process through with a coach or a counselor, to be able to move through what was triggered and what your truth is, so that you can then communicate clearly. And I am going to continue this conversation because it's a really important conversation. Communication is crucial. Being able to communicate clearly, with confidence, with clarity, and with compassion, and we're going to talk more about that, is really essential in every area of your life, in your relationships. And here's the thing, every area of your life includes relationships, and I'm including the relationship with yourself. So, and that fear of judgment, you need to look at the fear. This is just popping as I'm talking, and I know we're coming into an end for the show, but that fear of judgment, you may also be judging yourself. And sometimes you may be judging yourself most harshly. And so it's learning not only to reframe and talk and start talking to yourself in nicer ways, but to stop that self-judgment, because that's not helping you. So we talked about that fear of judgment. We talked about how to overcome it, which is the self-talk. It's being able to move through your feelings so that you can come back to that calm, clear state, so that you can connect with the true you, and being in the present moment. Because when you communicate clearly, you are in the present moment. That's important. And we started talking about having more clarity in your communication. And we'll continue this discussion in a couple of weeks. So next week, there'll be a replay, and it's going to be, and it's so interesting that it came up this week, was stepping into your authentic self. So definitely you want to catch the replay of Stepping into Your Authentic Self next week. And I will see you in 2 weeks. And I want to thank you all for being here, for joining us, whether you're joining live or whether you're joining at a later time. Thank you for coming, and thank all of you who asked questions and commented. Appreciate all of you. And thank you. Arnie says thank you. Appreciate that. And I really want to support all of you to know that you can do this. You can learn how to communicate the power of your voice and communicate with confidence, clarity, and compassion. And so, to be continued. And I wish you all an inspired and empowered day and evening, and an inspired and empowered week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye for now.